if you are not willing to abandon that context, that definition, and all the beliefs associated with it, you will not be able to come into a transformed perspective and experience of body in which healing is inevitable, regeneration, and redemption. The coming back into the spiritual, the coming back into the experience of the spiritual original of what your body is. But if you're going to wake up, if you're going to be released from the trap the ego has created, you're going to have to step out of the box. You're going to have to be willing to reach outside your definitions. You're going to have to let new meanings with a capital M in. Again, the ego and the body conspire against your minds, and because the ego realizes that its enemy, meaning the divine one that you are, can end them both merely by knowing they are not part of him, they join in the attack together. This is perhaps the strangest, what? Perception, not truth, you see. The strangest perception of all, if you consider what it really involves. The ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is its own learning device, and that the learning device is more real than it is. More real than it, the mind is. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does believe it. Now, is anyone confused about what was just said? I think so. You are mind. You are the conscious experience of being. The center and circumference of you is mind, consciousness, in which all experience is being experienced. I pick up the piece of paper. I hear it. I feel it. Where? Out here in front of me? No, in my consciousness. Where are you experiencing everything that's going on in this room? Are you experiencing it in this room? Or is all of what you are experiencing in this room going on in you as a conscious experience, purely mental? Well, I'll tell you the answer is the latter. Everything is going on in your mind, even your experience of so-called physicality. It is a conscious experience. The function of mind is to be conscious. To be conscious of what? Itself. Now, mind is God. The movement of God's mind, because God is life and therefore action, the movement of mind is experienced as conscious experience, mental experience. Mental experience of what? Of the nature and character and infinity and omnipotence of the mind that is moving. In other words, of God. this movement of mind that is God is what you call creation. And creation is as infinite as the mind that is moving. So, mind moves. In the beginning was the Word. And the movement is experienced. And the Word was with God. And the movement of mind that is experienced is recognized by that which is being the movement. In other words, self-recognition, God recognizing Himself in the movement. And the Word was God. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and, light bulb going on, the Word was God, self-recognition. The function of mind is to be aware, and to be aware of what? The only thing there is to be aware of, God. The function of mind is to glorify God by recognizing God in everything that's being experienced, because God is the only thing that is happening. Now that's your function. That's the function of mind. But the ego has come up with this incredibly tiny and selfish idea of mind. It says that your mind is right up here in your head. It's in a brain. It's in synapses and electrical currents. And it's all a matter of reaction and response to physical stimuli from this physical world. And of course it's talking about the kingdom of heaven. And it says, it is the function of this mind to learn, to gather information, you see. In other words, it takes this infinite presence of mind, whose only function, is to fully acknowledge God in the infinite experience of being consciousness. It takes that and says, mind is a learning tool. You see? Diminishing it and twisting it into something that will occupy this mind forever in a manner that will absolutely deprive it of remembering and accessing its infinite and real function. So let me read this again. The ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is its own learning device, and that the learning device is more real than the mind itself is. Although it says here that the learning device is more real than it is. You see how it shifts the emphasis. You know, it's very much like sewing, for those of you who have used sewing machines. When you're new, you think you are supposed to watch the needle and where it's penetrating the fabric, just so that you may make straight lines. But once you get a little experience, you find that where your attention needs to be given is the 5/8 inch seam line marked on the foot plate. which is 5/8 of an inch away from the needle. And if you keep the edge of the fabric on that what? Guide line, you'll have a straight seam. Inexperience causes you to look in the wrong place, give your attention to the wrong thing. Experience teaches you where to really look. The ego distracts you and tells you to put your attention where everything will keep you in a state of need of constant defense, whereas there's a place of excellence in you, that which is nothing more than your right mind, the altar, the Holy Spirit. That is where you need to be giving your attention. And that is where you need to be looking at your garment from, you might say. That is where you are to be looking at the world and universe from. The guide that you have within you. That is only a guide because you've disowned it temporarily, and it's really your capital S self. And you have to choose to give your attention to your guide so that you may have a guideline that will bring you home, because you're looking in the right place where the opportunity to see things truly resides. So again, the ego, which is not real, attempts to persuade the mind, which is real, that the mind is its own learning device, and that the learning device is more real than it, the mind, is. No one in his right mind could possibly believe this, and no one in his right mind does believe it. Here then, the one answer of the Holy Spirit to all the questions which the ego raises. You are a child of God, a priceless part of His kingdom, which He, God, created as part of Him. Remember, God in the act of extension or creation does not extend outside Himself. So everything that God is creating remains within God as God, and in that sense is incapable of losing its identity. You are a child of God, a priceless part of His kingdom, which He created as part of Him. Now, I'm going to put it this way. You are a child of God right now, right here. Not a child of God in reality. Not a child of God in the sweet by and by after you die. You are a child of God right now, a priceless part of His kingdom, and I'm going to add right here, which He created as part of Him. Nothing else exists, and only this is real. Now, what I've just read is a redefinition of your conscious experience of being right here and right now. It is not a comment about the future or a different dimension. Let's be very clear on this point. Continuing, you have chosen a sleep in which you have had bad dreams. But the sleep is not real. And God calls you to awake. There will be nothing left of your dream when you hear Him, because you will be awake. Your dreams have contained many of the ego's symbols, and they have confused you. Yet, that was only because you were asleep and did not know. When you awake, and I'm going to add, which needs to happen in the here and now, not in the sweet by and by. When you awake, you will see the truth around you and in you. And you will no longer believe in dreams because they will have no reality for you. Yet, the kingdom and all that you have created there will have great reality for you because they are beautiful and true. And I'm going to reiterate, and I have not talked about this much. I'm not going to say a lot about it now. But all this time that you have been preoccupied with misinterpretations of reality, of the kingdom of heaven and of yourself, you haven't stopped being the Christ. And you have managed to extend love, and every extension of love has constituted a creation. And therefore, in the kingdom of heaven, your creations that you have been bringing into existence by virtue of love that has managed to be expressed remain for you to experience once again, because they are eternal. You are, every single one of you, from time to time, creating eternal expressions. And I'll tell you something. When those eternal expressions have come into being, almost always there has been a healing in the here and now for you, or for a loved one, or for a stranger that you had a momentary contact with and were undefended enough to truly care. And in that moment of undefendedness, love was extended, and that one was healed. That one's life was transformed, whether you ever heard about it or not. You see. What I want to convey to you is that no matter how mortal you think you are, and no matter how much you think your mind is a learning tool for getting better or for creating better defense, you are forever still being the only thing God is being right where you are, the Christ that you are. And in the kingdom of heaven, your extensions of love abide eternally and await your remembrance of them. Continuing. In the kingdom, right here and right now, where you are and what you are is perfectly certain. In other words, there's no confusion about it for you. There is no doubt there because the first question was never asked. What is that question? What am I? Again, there is no doubt there because the first question was never asked. Even the asking of the question was part of the dream. Asked by a fantastic or fantasy presence that didn't even exist. Continuing, being, comma, alone lives in the kingdom, where everything lives in God without question. The time that was spent on questioning in the dream has given way to creation and to its eternity. You, and I'm going to add again, right here, right now, are as certain as God, because you are as true as He is. But what was once quite certain in your minds has become only the ability for certainty. In other words, when you chose to go it alone, then everything that you are became nothing more than a potential for you to become, because you lost the experience of your identity. Continuing, the introduction of abilities into being was the beginning of uncertainty, because abilities are potentials, not accomplishments. Your abilities are totally useless in the presence of God's accomplishments and also of yours. Accomplishments are results which have been achieved. In other words, accomplishments have nothing to do with a birthright. Which is already yours before you thought to lift a finger. When they are perfect, abilities are meaningless. It is curious that the perfect must now be perfected, meaning that you, who are the mind whose function is to recognize God everywhere, has been turned into a series of mental processes by which you can ultimately arrive at a point of perfection. It is curious that the perfect must now be perfected. In fact, it's more than curious. In fact, it is impossible. You must remember, however, that when you put yourselves in an impossible situation, you believed that the impossible was possible. You believed that you actually could do things yourself. Impossible. And right now, the apparent difficulty of existence lies in the fact that you're still attempting to do what's impossible. But you are beginning to hear the answer. Continuing. Abilities must be developed or you cannot use them. This is not true of anything that God created, but it is the kindest solution possible to what you have made. In an impossible situation, you can develop your abilities to the point where they can get you out of it. You have a guide to how to develop them, but you have no commander except yourself. This is important. You have a guide to how to develop them. It's the Holy Spirit. It's me. It's every one of the awakened brotherhood who are working with each one of you, your guide, your guides. You have a guide on how to develop them, but you have no commander except yourself. This is the down-to-earth, nitty-gritty, practical aspect of what we're talking about. It's the part all of you are reluctant to accept because you would rather have someone else or something else wave a magic wand and heal you or wake you up. And there ain't no such creature. Again, you have a guide to how to develop them, abilities. But you have no commander except yourself. This leaves you in charge of the kingdom with both a guide to find it and a means to keep it. You have a model to follow who will strengthen your command and never detract you from it in any way. You, therefore, retain the central place in your perceived enslavement, a fact which itself demonstrates that you are not enslaved. In this realization lies your salvation. Oh, but does this mean you're guilty? Another question not to try to answer. No, it means what it says. You, therefore, retain the central place in your perceived enslavement. Pay attention to that. That's empowering. That's not a negative. That's a statement of releasing truth. You therefore retain the central place as commander in your perceived enslavement, a fact which itself demonstrates that you are not enslaved. You are in an impossible situation only because you thought it was possible to be in one. You would be, now listen to this, because this is the part none of you wants to hear. You would be in an impossible situation if God showed you your perfection and proved to you that you were wrong. But that's what all of you want to do. That's what all of you want. You want God to show you the answer. You want a commander other than yourself. You want an authority other than yourself. You want an authority other than your very own conviction that you must bring every ounce of your energy and commitment to. And until you bring every ounce of energy and commitment to it yourself for your reason, you won't be behaving in your true identity. Now, if God comes along and be's the commander and commands you to recognize the truth about yourself, it won't be necessary for you to bring every ounce of your energy and commitment to claiming your divine birthright.